A father's life is cut short on a desolate highway.
You've got a dark horse running at you. You're not going to see anything until it is right in front of you.
He was killed instantly.
What seemed like just a tragic accident would open the door for jealousy, greed, and a twisted attempt at murder.
Good afternoon, and welcome to True Crime Mysteries. If you're new to the channel, hello and welcome. And if you're returning, welcome back. If you could give this video a like and comment with your thoughts down below, that would be much appreciated as it helps the channel to grow. And if you're not subscribed yet, go ahead and click that red button because I make more content like this, and hit the little bell icon so you get notified when I post. Today, we are discussing 3 more hired hitman fails. But first, I want to let you know that this video is sponsored by Hunt-A-Killer. More on that in a minute. Let's get into it. Number 1. Angel Brown. In the 90s, Angel Brown had dreams of being a boxer. She spent hours training and took her chances in the ring, but after a string of losses, she threw in her gloves and turned to exotic dancing instead. One night while she was dancing at the Queen of Hearts Club in Ashtabula, Ohio, her luck changed and she met her future husband, Daniel Posey. There was only one problem. Daniel was a married father of 3. And he was a good father too, according to his ex-wife Lisa Luke. But their marriage fell apart after one of their children was diagnosed with leukemia. Then Lisa had caught Daniel having an affair. Daniel had visited Lisa and their sick child at the hospital, and he was dressed suspiciously well. When Daniel left, Lisa trailed behind him and followed him to the Queen of Hearts Club, where Brown was a dancer. Daniel and Lisa divorced in 1996, and he left with Angel Brown to Las Vegas, where they lived for 3 years. In 2003, they went back to Ohio and got married, where he took her last name as a sign of devotion, as Brown requested. Daniel and Brown had their first son in 2004, and Brown became a stay-at-home mother, trading in nights at the strip club for PTA meetings. Then, in 2011, a freak accident turned everyone's world upside down. Daniel had been driving down State Route 193 when a runaway horse from a nearby Amish community ran into the road and hit his truck. Daniel was killed instantly, as was another driver who'd swerved trying to avoid the collision. At the time of his death, Daniel was over $30,000 behind in child support payments to Lisa, and when she'd called to ask him about the money, he'd hand the phone to Brown, who'd tell her she wasn't getting a cent. Daniel's life insurance policy totaled $255,000. After his death, Lisa tried to receive what she was owed in child support, and while doing so, found out that Brown had only listed one of her and Daniel's kids as his next of kin, which would have provided Brown with a larger piece of the pie. Soon after, Brown filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the owner of the horse involved in the accident. As a result of the settlement, Daniel's estate would receive $200,000. Brown assumed she would be the sole recipient of the proceeds, until she found out that she would have to split the money with Daniel's 3 children from his first marriage, and Brown didn't like that. So that same day she reached out to an old friend, James Hawley, for a favor. James knew Brown from her days as a stripper and aspiring boxer. He was not only a customer at the strip club, but also had been her boxing trainer. They'd reconnected after he was released from prison, where he was serving time for conspiracy to commit arson at a fireworks factory. Brown told James that she was having trouble sorting out her late husband's estate with his ex-wife, and that she needed Lisa gone. She paid him a down payment of $4,000, which he accepted, and then used to pay his bills before gambling the rest away at a casino in Pennsylvania. The next day, Brown texted James and asked if the murder had happened yet. He told her it would be done that night, but instead he made his way to the police and reported her to the Ashtabula County Police Sheriff, William Johnson. James told Sheriff Johnson that of course he never intended to carry out the murder-for-hire plot, but he worried that Brown would try to hire another hitman instead. While the police were interviewing James, Brown sent him another text calling off the murder. She told him to keep $1,000 of the down payment for his troubles. As per police instructions, James called Brown back and told her he'd already spent the money and asked if she still wanted the murder done. "Go ahead and do it," Brown responded. Police then outfitted James with a hidden camera and sent him to Brown's house to discuss the deal. They met on her front porch where she relayed her worries about being caught. She even patted him down looking for a wire. James later contacted Brown and told her he'd murdered Lisa. And when he asked what she wanted done with the body, Brown told him to make it disappear. Brown was arrested soon after. According to Detective Sean Ward, who transported Brown to the police station after her arrest, Brown repeatedly stated, "You don't understand why I did it. She was going to take everything from me." Brown told police that she never gave James any money to kill Lisa, and that she was only joking when she told James that she wanted Lisa dead. But police found evidence on Brown while they were booking her, including James's business card, a $2,000 money wrapper, and receipts from the bank totaling large sums. During the trial, Brown pleaded not guilty and claimed that the whole incident was misinterpreted by investigators and that the entire scenario was based on a $150 marijuana deal, but the police had recordings, including a phone call between Brown and James, where she told him that she wanted Lisa's body to disappear, but didn't want to be implicated in her death. Brown asked Judge Ronald Vittel for lenience since a guilty verdict would result in her and Daniel's 9-year-old son losing both of their parents. Her lawyer urged that she received a probation sentence instead, but Judge Vittel didn't budge, telling her, "You should have thought of your child when this whole preposterous event started. Your child was not your number one consideration." In August of 2013, after just 2 short hours of jury deliberation, Brown was found guilty on 2 counts of conspiracy to commit aggravated murder and was sentenced to 9 years in prison.
Following Angel's conviction, D'Artagnan goes to live with his cousin Linda and her husband.
I wrote a letter to the prison for her to stop writing me, but she still keeps writing me. I'm not afraid of her. I don't care that when she gets released, as long as she stays away from me.
Thoughts about James Hawley are that essentially he quite possibly saved my life. He did the right thing.
The events took a huge toll on Lisa and her children. After learning about the murder-for-hire plot, Lisa obtained a permit for a handgun for self-protection and called the police multiple times when she feared people were lurking outside her home. Lisa said, "From the day the detectives showed up at my door and told me that a murder was planned upon me, my life has been terrible. I don't feel safe going anywhere."
When they came back guilty on both counts, it was a huge relief, not just for us, but for Lisa.
When the verdict was read, I was so happy.
The judge at sentencing gave Angel Brown 9 years. It wasn't the maximum, but under Ohio law, it was probably as close as he could get to the maximum.
As it turns out, even prison couldn't keep Brown out of trouble. In 2014, while serving her time at the Maryville Reformatory for Women, Brown was accused of making threats towards a woman who was seeking custody of Brown's son. The woman claimed that she was receiving threatening letters from Brown saying, "Wait till I get out." The woman was also afraid that Brown would send someone to come after her. No further information about the incident has been released. Brown will be 45 years old when she's released from prison in 2022. And now I want to take a minute to talk about our sponsor for this video, Hunt-A-Killer. Are you looking for a unique gift for that true crime fanatic in your life? Or maybe you want to share your love of solving mysteries with your friends? Get them the perfect gift this year, Hunt-A-Killer. Hunt-A-Killer is a murder mystery subscription box that is a new way to do game night. It gives the opportunity to have fun and investigate crime without ever having to leave the house. This season, solve the mystery of what happened to Beth Ferris Henricks. Her death was declared an accident in a small town of Mallory Rock, Maine, and her sister Gwen sets out to prove Beth was murdered. Gwen, having grown up on the New England island, must investigate the residents she has known all of her life to catch the killer. Gwen will need your help to expose her hometown and uncover the secrets that exist on Mallory Rock. Not ready to subscribe? No problem. If you don't want a monthly service, they also offer standalone packages. Not ready to let go of spooky season? Solve a murder mystery. I really enjoyed solving these boxes with my friends. They are something totally different from other board games and offer a completely unique investigation with each box. With each delivery, you'll sift through piles of documents, evidence, audio recordings, and case files, eliminating suspects and identifying murder weapons until you crack the case and catch the killer. It's like an escape room delivered right to your door. Right now, you can go to huntakiller.com/TCM and use my code TCM for a $10 off purchase. Again, make sure to use my code TCM for a $10 discount. Do you have what it takes to hunt a killer? Thank you again to our sponsors. Number 2, Youhui. Now, for a look into what's been described as the dumbest hitman plot ever, which all began in October 2013. It started when a Chinese real estate developer, Youhui, wanted to get revenge on his business competitor, a man known as Mr. Wei. Wei had filed a lawsuit against Youhui's company over a dispute around a development project, and Youhui was allegedly scared of the money he'd lose during the court case. So he thought it would be easier to get rid of Mr. Wei altogether. To do so, he paid a hitman 2 million Chinese yuan to kill Mr. Wei, which at the time was worth around $282,000 US. But instead of completing the task himself, the hitman decided to be his own kind of businessman and outsource the murder to someone else. In this case, he hired another hitman who would then get to keep half of the initial payment. The problem was, that hitman didn't want to carry out the hit either. So then he took a cue from the first hitman, accepted the money, and tapped in another man to complete the task. That third hitman paid the fourth hitman $38,000 up front and promised another $70,000 once the job was done. So then that hitman took the money and, like those before him, outsourced the job yet again to another hitman. He paid that guy $28,000 in Chinese yuan and promised another $70,000 when the murder was complete. And as you can see where we might be going, the murder was outsourced 4 different times over the course of 6 months until it reached the 5th and final hitman, who was offered $14,000 in Chinese yuan to murder Mr. Wei. But he too had another plan. This time, though, it was different. Instead of completing the hit like intended, he met Mr. Wei in a cafe and told him about the murder for hire plot. He even offered to help him fake his own death. Mr. Wei agreed, and together they staged his murder. The final hitman gagged and bound Wei and took photos of him, touting his successful hit. The message was sent from an outsourced hitman to outsourced hitman to outsourced hitman until it finally got back to the first hitman, the original hire, and by that time Mr. Wei had reportedly told it all to the police. In 2016, the case went to trial. At first, the 5 hitmen and Yan Wei were acquitted due to the lack of evidence, but that decision was appealed by the prosecution and the case went into a second trial at the Nanning Intermediate People's Court in China. The trial lasted 3 years, but eventually Youhui and the 5 hitmen were charged with intentional homicide. In 2019, Youhui received a 5-year jail term for initiating the murder for hire plot, and his hired hitmen received sentences that ranged from 2 to 4 years each. Number 3. Mohammed Hakimzadah. It was October of 2016. Stephen Portlands had just finished grocery shopping in Scarborough, a region of Toronto, Ontario, when he got a cab to help him on his way home. The driver, 55-year-old Mohammed Hakimzadah, was the owner of his own cab and limo company. As they drove, the driver talked to Stephen about his life, more specifically, his wife, who'd left him a year prior. Now they were battling for custody of their kids. According to Stephen, the driver talked about how he wanted to get revenge on his wife and daughter for the harm they'd caused him, that he wanted to kill his wife and her family court lawyer. Stephen, who'd faced over 100 convictions himself, claimed that he initially planned to rip off the driver. He lied and told him he knew a Hells Angel hitman from Quebec that he could connect him with. But then he started to worry that Hakimzadah would actually go through with the hit one way or another, so instead he went to the police. Working together with the police, Stephen contacted this driver and told him he'd introduced him to the hitman he'd mentioned, Mark, who was actually an undercover police officer. Mark and Hakimzadah met several times over the course of the next month until they eventually settled on a price of $50,000 per murder. According to the courts, Hakimzadah was paranoid about being found out, so when he met with Mark, he'd write down the most incriminating parts of the conversation out of fear of being recorded. The undercover officer, whose identity is protected under the media publication ban, said in one note stated, "I don't want her alive," in reference to his wife. He said Hakimzadah wanted the murder to look like an accident. He also gave Mark the name and address of his wife's court lawyer, who he wanted to be killed as well. Hakimzadah told the undercover officer that he thought the lawyer should be shot while she was entering the courthouse where the custody battle was being held, in busy downtown Toronto. According to the undercover officer, Hakimzadah made a throat-slitting gesture when discussing her murder. In the conversations recorded by the undercover officer, Hakimzadah said that lawyer is to be gone when asked if he wanted the body to be found, or if he wanted it to make the news. He replied, "In the news, if it's in the news, it's better." He told the undercover officer that he would pay to have his former wife disappear and to no longer exist. But then he changed his mind. Instead, he wanted to first frame his wife for a gun and drug possession. He wanted Mark to plant cocaine and a gun in his wife's car. Then Hakimzadah would call the police so she would be imprisoned. Allegedly, he wanted his wife to feel the same way he did when he was jailed for a week after being charged with violating a court order and threatening his child. The charges were later withdrawn. Mark played along and met with Hakimzadah in the parking lot of a Chapters bookstore on November 17, 2016. He showed him the cocaine and replica gun that he would plant on his wife as per their plan. The men agreed, and shortly after, he was arrested. During the trial, Superior Court Justice Robert Goldstein said Hakimzadah consistently tried to obstruct the legal process, as he hired and fired numerous lawyers throughout most of the proceedings. Hakimzadah maintained his innocence during the trial and instead accused the police of trying to frame him by tampering and editing with the recordings they had. Judge Goldstein had said he was concerned about his mental health, as he'd physically and mentally deteriorated over the 3 years he was in custody awaiting trial. He underwent a mental health assessment and was declared fit to stand trial. In January of 2020, Hakimzadah was found guilty on 5 counts of counseling to commit an indictable offense, including 2 murders, transfer of a firearm, trafficking cocaine, and public mischief. Judge Goldstein said he would have imposed a sentence of 11 or 12 years, but due to Hakimzadah's deteriorating mental and physical health, he lowered the sentence to 9 years. His lawyers later appealed his sentence to the Court of Appeal of Ontario in a bid for less punishment, but it was rejected by a panel of judges. Judge Goldstein said that Hakimzadah had a particular animosity towards women, specifically those that had angered him. Just as you don't need a weatherman to tell you which way the wind blows, you don't need a psychologist to tell you that Mr. Hakimzadah is a misogynist, he said. Well, that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, please give this video a thumbs up if you like the content and subscribe for more if you haven't already. Also, don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you get notified when I post. And if you've done all that and want to support me and the channel, we have channel membership as well as Patreon to get early access, members-only content, live streams, and more. We also have merch and other goodies in the description box, as well as links to all my socials. But until then, I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.